Hi all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted kitchen chats and also studio chats with some of the most interesting voices in the culinary South. I'm Stephanie Burt, a food and beverage writer who travels with her fork to write for a variety of publications, from magazines you might have on your coffee table to the website you love to visit for your favorite recipes. And I'm inviting you to come behind the scenes with me to get to know the people who make this Southern culinary landscape so special. I'm always hungry for the next bite, thirsty for that next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is proud to say that once again, the presenting sponsor for Season 8 is Townsend Automotive in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. First off, thanks to so many of you listeners out there who not only decided to purchase a vehicle from this family-owned business in the last 2 years, but also shared with them that it was directly because of their support of this show. That's what community, even in our virtual format, is all about. Second, Townsend Automotive, celebrating 49 years serving West Alabama, has been extending its reach so that you don't even have to be in the Tuscaloosa area to purchase a car from them. Nationwide vehicle delivery service is available for Southern Fork listeners, and it's something that makes buying just the right new or certified pre-owned vehicle even easier. Visit townsendhonda.com for current inventory, or, of course, if you're in West Alabama, stop in. Townsend Automotive always salutes local entrepreneurs, from restaurateurs to podcasters, and they welcome you to be part of a community that does the same. You know how some childhood foods become taste touchstones that live in a memory? Well, for brothers Nick and Peter Dale of Athens, Georgia, that taste was Ecuadorian chocolate. When they went to visit their mom's family there on vacations and holidays, there was just something special about that chocolate, something they could never quite taste outside of the country. And for a chef like Peter Dale, that was the fuel for a creative journey. See, in 2012, Peter was named the People's Best New Chef of the Southeast by Food & Wine magazine, as well as a rising star chef. He helped Hugh Acheson, who he worked with at 5 and 10, open Empire State South in Atlanta, and since then, Peter has become an Athens chef powerhouse with the national Seabear Oyster Bar and Maepole. In the middle of all that restaurant work in 2014, he and his brother Nick created Condor Chocolates, which imports Ecuadorian chocolate, then produces and sells bean-to-bar chocolate bars, truffles, sipping chocolate, gelato, and a variety of confections. It's their homage to the birthplace of their mother, a testament to the sense of adventure that brought their dad to her, and a celebration of that taste of Ecuador, home of some of the finest cacao in the world. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Peter Dale.
Thanks for having me, or thanks for coming to see us.
Yes, driving to Athens to see Peter. For some reason, I really always feel like I want to say your first and last name.
I have two first names.
Right.
Basically. And people are like, and what comes after Dale? So.
Yeah, because it is the South, and we're used to Mary Kate and Ashley Marie and everything. So Peter Dale just adds like, right on in.
What's next? Yeah. And also, having a one syllable last name.
It just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Athens has been your home for a long, long time. And that's really because of your dad, right?
Yeah. So my parents moved here in 1973. They were on their honeymoon. My dad was starting grad school at UGA, and they didn't have a connection to Georgia except that my dad's undergrad roommate in Florida was from Athens, and my dad went to the Peace Corps and got interested in agriculture and feeding people, this very like altruistic feeling about agriculture. And his friend who had been his roommate was like, "Oh, Georgia has a good ag school. You should move to Athens." And they
that's
moved to
what
Athens.
happened.
Yeah.
But part of that Peace Corps was in Ecuador, right?
So it was actually in Chile.
Sorry.
But on his way home, he was kind of backpacking through South America.
Like you do in the 70s.
As you do. As you do. And he was in Ecuador and was going from one city to another by bus. And at that time, the bus would, like at lunchtime, at meal times, they would stop in a town, and there'd be like a little plaza, and the passengers would get off and have like a sit down, like proper meal. And so I think they'd stopped for lunch, and he had noticed there was a cute girl traveling by herself on the bus. And so he asked if he could sit with her at lunch. And kind of the rest is history.
Yeah.
So
your family is from the South, but also from Ecuador.
Yeah.
And so that's really where the chocolate comes from. And those of you who have listened to the intro, Peter's a chef and, has restaurants and stuff. But now we have this chocolate company that you and your brother own, right? Your brother Nick.
Yeah.
Right. It really began because you couldn't find the chocolate. Ecuador meant, as a kid, you went there all the time. You were just telling me off mic, it meant good chocolate. By the way, that's really a child's dream, to go to a foreign country, eat all the good food, and somehow amazing chocolate is involved in that as well.
Yeah, we didn't know how lucky we had it. My aunt was a caterer and pastry chef, and so we ate really good food. And definitely my interest in food, a lot of it comes from those experiences, going to Ecuador in the summer on our summer vacations and just eating good food and good chocolate. And we knew that the chocolate was different than what we would eat in America. And I don't think we knew how to describe it or knew why it was different, but we knew it was different.
And is that difference really, does all chocolate have to be fermented?
Yeah. So, and that's something that we didn't learn until later. And I think a lot of people don't know is that chocolate is fermented. The cacao bean is fermented. And that's a super important part of the flavor. If it's not fermented well, you're not going to have chocolate that tastes good. So, all cacao made into good chocolate is fermented.
And so then the fermentation happens on the farm before it gets to this country, right?
Yeah.
So in building Condor, you and Nick decided to source directly from farmers, right? Yeah. There's the story, right? That's the Southern Fork story, directly from farmers. You knew that was coming, right? But so you work with farmers. How do you know what good fermenting is? Obviously, it comes down to taste, and you're a chef and you have that background, but you have to see it, right? Are there physical signs?
Physical signs would be, that would be tough to see. Fortunately, it takes, making a lot of chocolate, lots of different batches of chocolate, to notice those differences. So a lot of chocolate gets made that, doesn't get sold. We make lots of little batches of lots of different chocolates. And so, some of them become chocolate bars and some of them, don't. And, I eat chocolate every day. And I think as a kid, I would have thought that was just the greatest thing in the world. And I,
as an adult, you probably do too, right?
I don't know what it's not like to eat chocolate every day. But I think it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, it's probably pretty good. When you're talking about making lots of little batches, you were saying Nick really is he's kind of the mechanical brains behind this. So you're small batch, very small batch. Yeah. And so your machinery can't be Nestle size.
Correct. Yeah.
But it has to be bigger than kitchen size. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. So there's just not a lot of, the way there's home bread makers, there's not home chocolate makers. So there's just not a lot of equipment that is sort of smaller in scale. So, some of the equipment we have is, made for chocolate. It's made in Italy or Belgium or Germany. But then some things we've had to rig, maybe some parts that are legit chocolate making products, rigged with some things we got at Home Depot or Lowe's. Fortunately, Nick is very mechanical. I am not, but he's very mechanical and can rig some of these things together and make it work. And the other thing is our tempering machines are probably our most complicated machinery, and they come from Italy and Germany with no instructions, and they only break in August when Europe is on vacation. So, and there's no repair person around here.
It's like that Looney Tunes moment, right? Where it goes, boing, boing, boing.
Exactly. It's like August 1st, everyone's at the beach in Europe, and we're going to shut down.
Right. This kind of factory thing is just up my alley. So distilleries, breweries, I went to Carolina Malt House last year, and sometimes asking about that physical thing, sometimes fermentation does have physical properties.
Yeah.
Wine bubbles and yeast. Yeah. Yeast makes bread rise and all kinds of, or sourdough starter rise, then the bread.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. But beyond that, you're having to age chocolate. I had never really even thought about that. So you have to temper things. It's so fussy. That's why there's no home chocolate makers.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can't make macaroni and cheese from scratch, we can't make chocolate from scratch at home in America.
Yeah. I honestly hadn't really thought about that. It's not something that people really attempt very much to make at home. I think I saw a TikTok video once of someone making chocolate, and I don't know if it turned out very well. It looked like chocolate. But yeah, it's not something that people take on because chocolate, I think fussy is a really good word. It's very temperamental. It likes a very certain temperature, certain humidity level that is generally not what we have in Georgia. So that adds an extra layer of complexity to things. There's just a lot of moments where things can, go right or go wrong in chocolate making.
So how did you knew what it needed to taste like, but how did you teach yourself?
There was a lot of trial and error, and really, Nick had basically a little chocolate factory on his kitchen counter. So he rigged up the home version of, with like little mini motorized mortar and pestles on his kitchen counter. And, did a lot you can temper by hand. We now temper with machines in order to do the volume that we need to do. But yeah, he did it very DIY. I will say that the bean to bar, we're in the bean to bar category, meaning we're involved in every step of the process from a bean to a finished chocolate bar.
That's the cool kids chocolate, ladies and gentlemen. Bean to bar.
Bean to bar. Other people say craft chocolate. Yeah, that community is very small, and there's not a lot of chocolate makers in the South. And I will say that we are really collaborative. There's Chocolato in Atlanta. They're wonderful. We've worked together a lot. We shared a container of beans years ago. French Broad in Asheville, which they're kind of the big kids on the block. They were super helpful in the beginning with helping us understand how to keep chocolate in temper in the summer in the South when it's hot and humid, and chocolate doesn't like to be hot and humid. Yeah, I think that we just want people to eat good chocolate, and if you eat our chocolate or eat French Broad or eat Chocolato or any of the other great craft bean to bar chocolate makers, like that's awesome. I'd rather you eat, somebody else's than eat not good chocolate.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to that question. Give me some attributes of really good chocolate.
What I love about particularly Ecuadorian chocolate, the chocolate, we only source beans in Ecuador because of our family connection there, but also we believe Ecuador produces the best chocolate, the best cacao. We're biased, but we do firmly believe that Ecuador produces the best, and it is, a lot of people believe it is where the tree originated in the jungles in Ecuador. I particularly love the fruity aspect of Ecuadorian chocolate. I love that you have the toasted notes from roasting the beans. but also sort of like a bright citrus acidity. And then I like the sort of, a lot of times you'll have sort of a long finish that it could even be sort of like an almond butter kind of finish. And so it just like takes your palate in a lot of different directions. And there are more commodity chocolate that is sort of like one note. And maybe there's other flavors that are added, sometimes vanilla is added, a lot of sugar, and it masks, the nuances. I think chocolate you can think about it like wine.
Or coffee.
Or coffee, of course. They really represent a sense of place. And we are trying to tell the story of Ecuadorian chocolate, more commodity chocolate that they're masking and losing that identity of place either by mixing or adding too many other flavors, too much sugar, and you lose the terroir.
Yeah. So walking into Condor today, it smelled like you were making, and not like a candy factory, which I mentioned. I love to go to food factories. So I've been to, actually the first story I ever wrote about a food factory was a candy factory. I went to a gummy worm factory.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I'd like to go there.
It was pretty wild. And they also made cough drops, which was really interesting.
Okay.
So, sugar candy, just in different forms.
Different active ingredients.
Yeah, but that's an aside, as happens with ADHD sometimes. But it didn't smell like you were making candy. It didn't smell like you were making Russell Stover. It smelled fermented. I mean, it smelled of a plant.
Yeah.
It smelled like a plant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is fascinating. It was a roasted plant, but there was a vegetal quality to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we are buying what we call it green beans, which if you were to see it, they're brown, the cacao beans, but on the farm in Ecuador, they were harvested. They were removed from the pod. They were dried in the sun to remove this sort of like gooey outer layer. They were fermented, and then they were put in a bag or in a box, but the same type of burlap bag that coffee comes in. And so then that gets put on a ship and brought to us. And then when we open that bag, you get this really intense, like funky, fermented smell, like you would smell at a brewery or at a winery. It's that same smell. And then we get in the process of roasting those beans, and then you start getting other aromas, which are more reminiscent of chocolate. But yeah, from the beginning phase, where we start, it is a plant kind of funky smell, which I think a lot of people don't realize that is part of the process.
But one of the parts that Condor really shines in is beyond just the beautiful bars and beyond the beautiful chocolate. You have additions, you have different flavors, and that's where you really get to play. Like we were watching, what was that?
The guava.
Yeah. Will you explain that?
Yeah.
Just that chocolate, I think people would love to hear about.
Yeah. That is actually a chocolate that that's a truffle that we just rolled out that I have been campaigning for a long time. So I take a lot of pride that has happened. But guava paste or guava jam, in Latin America, it's often called membrillo, which is not to be confused with membrillo in Spain, which is quince that you often get on a cheese plate. But this guava paste that you could buy at any sort of Latin market, even here in Athens, is commonly eaten with like a salty cheese. And I love that sweet, salty combination. And we do that with some of our products. But the guava, I felt like would be really nice, with dark chocolate, because you do have a bit of contrast with like the sweet guava and the tannins and the dark chocolate. And then we're sort of adding, tajin, Mexican chili powder adds a little layer of spice. So kind of with all food that I'm into, like I just love there to be lots of contrast, whether it's texture or flavors. I just want there to be a lot going on. So we've got like that.
I need one of those right now.
Yeah,
and I wish
pretty
I'd
tasty.
popped one in my mouth.
We should have grabbed a
I was
finished
taking
one.
so many pictures, though. Who wouldn't love watching chocolate getting robed? And I love that term. It is a technical term, right?
Yeah.
And you also have a table that shimmies to remove the bubbles, right?
It's our shake table. Or I like shimmy though. It's the shimmy table. Yeah. So when we make chocolate bars, particularly, they go in the chocolate, which is liquid at that point, gets put in a hard mold, and the chocolate, it doesn't want to get in all the little corners, and we want there to be right angles on your chocolate bar, and we also don't want there to be any air bubbles and air pockets. So we put the mold with the liquid chocolate on the shimmy table and make sure that the chocolate's in every corner and there's no air bubbles. It's really just an aesthetics thing, but we want it to be.
And it's a piece of technical equipment that Nick did not make. It's from the chocolate makers. And I love the idea of someone around in the world sitting around at a cocktail party and somebody going, "What do you sell? Shake tables for chocolate?" What?
Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it, right? So there's this global feel to Condor, but it's also really rooted specifically in your family. And we've talked a lot about the Ecuadorian side of things because that's the natural place to talk about. It's also very much an Athens company. Like your printing is done a couple blocks down the street for the bar packaging, the packaging, and a fabric designer made your label, like some of your art on the stuff. And chocolate is a gift. It's supposed to be beautiful. Are there other ways that you feel that Athens and Georgia is specifically expressed through this chocolate?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the inclusions that we use, cacao doesn't grow in Georgia. So, we try to incorporate as many local inclusions as we can. So our best selling bar naturally is chocolate bar with Georgia pecans. We love our pecans. And we just feel like that's
it's a company that we've had on the Southern Fork.
Yeah,
before,
Shermer Pecans.
Right.
They've been a fabulous partner to us. And we use, sea salt that's actually from Bulls Bay, South Carolina. So not a Georgia product, but our next door neighbor. So kind of with everything that I'm interested in food wise, I want the inspiration or even some of the main ingredients may have come from afar, but we really want the finished product to be specific to like this moment in Athens. So so whether it's inclusions, we're getting ready to do a blueberry bar, and Georgia grows a lot of blueberries, which we actually grow more blueberries than peaches, which is maybe something I shouldn't say publicly, but that is
too late now.
But we're gonna do some blueberry products, and then and actually we were talking about this earlier. The peach and chocolate isn't really a natural combination, so we haven't had too many opportunities to combine the two, but we are playing around a little bit with white chocolate, which is new to us, and we're doing a white chocolate and strawberry chocolate bar right now.
So it's like a strawberries and cream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my thought is that I think the next iteration will have to be peaches and cream. Yeah.
Now, you just threw down a gauntlet of controversy in the chocolate world by saying the words white chocolate. And I think some chocolatiers would not even want the term chocolate associated with that because it is mainly cocoa butter. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, that's correct. And, there's bean to bar chocolate makers that only make dark chocolate. One of the biggest bean to bar makers, they only do 2 ingredient chocolates, which is cocoa beans and sugar. We do milk chocolate, which is, we think's delicious. It's a really dark milk chocolate, but I think it's delicious. Yeah, there's people that say that white chocolate isn't chocolate, and it's controversial. And I don't know. I think I don't understand that because I think that people have just had white chocolate that I don't want to say it's bad, but it's, there was too much sugar, too many other flavorings. And white chocolate is certainly, I think, chocolate because it comes from the cacao pod. And what cocoa butter is the byproduct of making cocoa powder. So you take a cocoa bean and press it. And when you press it like in a really kind of industrial press, like making olive oil, sort of similar idea, you wind up with two things. You wind up with the flesh of the bean, which gets ground up and that becomes cocoa powder, which is used in lots of baking. And then the other part that remains is the cocoa butter, which is the fat of the bean. So it's, came from a cacao pod. And it's a good fat. It's like it's like avocado oil and coconut oil.
Yeah.
It's not.
I love that. I love that.
It's nothing to be afraid of.
Well, and when you're making whole bean chocolate, like you're talking about, that tempering is melding that fat with the fruit, right? I mean, or the other element.
Well, I think the fat is such an important part of chocolate because that is what coats your palate. When you eat chocolate, when you eat good chocolate, we want you to feel like you need a glass of milk. Like we want it to coat your palate, the way peanut butter kind of sticks to your roof of your mouth. Like we think that's a good thing. And that is actually the fat of the cocoa bean that's doing that. That's not the sugar. That's the fat that's producing that effect. And so white chocolate is just that fat with sugar. And I just think some manufacturers just use way too much sugar and maybe a lot of other sort of artificial flavoring, to make, coffee drinks at big chain coffee places that are just over the top. So, we think white chocolate can be really delicious and it can be a great canvas for lots of other delicious flavors. So, we're doing a white chocolate bar that's cocoa butter, a little bit of sugar and dried strawberries. And we grind that all together and make this sort of like dusty rose, colored bar, that I think is pretty tasty and it's not too sweet.
Well, I have one in my bag. So I'll be checking it later. Well, this has been such a creative, maybe it started over as an eddy, like an eddy in the creek, but now it's become more of the main flow of your creative culinary career at this time. And, you were talking to me that you thought it was just going to be retail and then, people wanted to have coffee and now you have multiple locations. I've been to all three today in short order, but is this what you thought it would be? Or did you have an idea or were you just following a creativity trail? You and your brother.
Well, we opened and like you said, I thought we were going to be a retail space. And we would be making our chocolate bars in the back and we'd have some shelves and we'd sell our chocolate bars. And then it just evolved. And I think we just sort of listened to customers and kind of they help us decide what we're going to be and what we're going to do. And, there wasn't this was not on the whiteboard, where we're at right now, but I love where we've gone and I wouldn't change anything, but this was not, I don't think there was a destination. We were just hoping that people wanted to buy chocolate bars that, cost more than they do at Kroger.
Yeah.
So we're grateful that they have.
They have in big ways. I love to see the expression of, I don't know you that well, but from what I can tell aesthetically, it is you, in I don't know your brother, Nick, but there's this whole expression of beautiful packaging and beautiful bars and the flavor combinations. And it just feels put all together. But I know there's always something happening in the background. So what is making you hungry right now? What are you thinking about next? Since you're just following that, hoping people buy chocolate.
We're in springtime. I'm thinking about summer. Specific like flavors that I'm thinking about. I want to dig a little deeper into the resources we have around us. So, I'm doing some R&D on, like horchata flavors because we in the South have a lot of rice production or historically have rice production. I think there's like an interesting story there to tell. And I think that there's a lot more to do with fruit in the chocolate where, and this is actually an idea that someone at UGA in their food science department, has been working on. And, we're talking about it, where in the chocolate making process, generally fruit is introduced like as a flavor, or maybe, things are covered in chocolate, but this is actually like fruit that's ground up with the beans, and becomes part of the chocolate, itself. And so the white chocolate with strawberry is kind of just the first step of that, but we're thinking about doing like dark chocolates that maybe the sweetener is fruit, dried fruit that is in the chocolate itself and helps provide the sweetness, and then also maybe even like a touch of color. So maybe it's not like entirely dark brown. Maybe there's like a tint of another color. And then also the sugar is not just cane sugar. There's sweetness coming from other ingredients. So that's kind of where my head's at as far as chocolate.
Yeah, that's a good space to be in. I really think about transforming the actual idea of a bar.
Yeah.
And taking those elements and separating them out and saying like, how can we reconfigure these with the same beautiful quality and consistency?
Yeah. And I think it allows us to introduce more things that are grown around us. So if you look at a chocolate bar, we have an 80% chocolate bar, and that's basically two ingredients. It's 80% cacao bean and 20% sugar. And depending on where the sugar's from, that could mean that bar really doesn't have anything. It was made in Georgia, but doesn't include anything from Georgia.
Right.
But if we could introduce some other elements like fruit, or nuts, we can maybe decrease that 80% number, and have something that's, a bit more of Ecuador and a bit more of Georgia.
Which is y'all.
Yeah, for sure.
All the way. Okay. So what's one aspect of this job that you created for yourself, which is Willy Wonka? I took 1 million pictures, so you're going to want to check that on Instagram. That really meshes like a puzzle piece with an aspect of your natural personality.
Well, I think that I love my favorite subject when I was a kid in school was social studies. I love learning about other cultures and history and why. And then when I got into food, I liked sort of understanding why things are eaten in certain places, and like a traditional dish in Georgia, there's often a really interesting backstory about why that's prepared and why the ingredients are included, and that's everywhere. So I just love that, food anthropology. So
that's why I'm in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just fascinating.
Yeah. So I can go down in some wormholes.
Yeah.
And, so as far as chocolate, I like being able to, combine this family heritage in Ecuador, and sort of tell the story about Ecuador. But then there's also like a lot of parallels between Ecuador and Georgia that I think people don't realize. There's a colonial past. There's some dark history as well. But then there's a lot of really, wonderful things as well. And there's a lot of vibrancy. And so whether it's in the chocolate or in our packaging, like we like being able to talk about both places. Both places are home. And we like melding them. And we've been talking about a lot about Ecuador, but you don't generally talk about Ecuador a lot.
No.
In your life.
No.
It's a little country. It's a little place. We love that people have embraced it. And, part of wanting to do Condor in the first place was to be able to share a little bit about Ecuador with Athens is home. We've born and raised here. And so it's cool to be able to talk about this part of us that we haven't really talked a lot about before. And then I think long term, our parents are getting older, and I was worried that we might lose this connection to where our mom's from. And now because of Condor, it means that we go to Ecuador more frequently. We feel like we're contributing to the economy down there, to communities that, could really benefit from what we're doing. And I think we'll have a long-term connection, even if our parents aren't here. We'll still be going to Ecuador and telling their story.
Legacy. Yeah. And building new at the same time.
Yeah.
It's great connecting and building new. quick fire, one thing keeping you up at night.
It
doesn't have to be in chocolate.
Doesn't have to be in chocolate. Well, I think the biggest thing is like, are all the ovens off? Is something burning down?
Yeah.
Like that just the physical spaces, like, are they okay while no one's there? The chocolate runs for 3 or 4 days in the grinding and the melanger and the grinding phase. That runs for 3 or 4 days. So if the power goes out, that's bad, because like liquid chocolate can seize up in a short amount of time. So if the power went out in the middle of the night, by the time you got there in the morning, you could have this solid mass of chocolate that would be really hard to melt.
And you can't bring it back from that.
Yeah.
This has been a conversation on the mic that has really honestly been years in the making. And it was, to me, worth the wait to come and spend time with you here in Athens. And I'm so excited that I get to reserve this question for you as you become part of the Southern Fork family. And this is my magic picnic basket question. So with this question, it's a virtual idea. I can time travel. I can go back in time and conscript anybody to make just one more bite of something that you want. I can source and I can cook a little bit, because I'd like to bring you some of your favorite things in this basket. They don't have to go together. It doesn't have to be a picnic, but I want to bring you some things that bring you life. And I know that sometimes, if you're like me, that changes depending on your whim and what you're interested in eating right now. So today, what can I put in that basket for you, Peter?
So my aunt, who was very inspiring to me, who's from who lived in Ecuador, she passed away a few years ago, and she was an amazing cook. So she made so many wonderful things, but I think about, it's a little warm today, starting to get a little warm. So I think about her shrimp ceviche that I love, or her fried shrimp. She was just like really talented. Ecuador, in addition to chocolate, has really good shrimp. So, one of her shrimp dishes would be excellent.
Okay. What else in there?
When I was in college, my first trip to Spain, some folks that we know took me out in Madrid, and we went to a bar that had food from Galicia, which is like the northwest of Spain. And that was the first time I had pimientos de padrón, that have become like a really common bar snack here now. But that was the first time I'd ever seen that. I mean, this was in the late 90s. And then I had basically sort of like a grilled cheese. And it was this cheese called tortilla cheese. And tortilla is like in the shape of a teat. It's like sort of this rounded pyramid shape. And it was like this grilled cheese sandwich with that tortilla cheese and the pimientos de padrón. That's just like, I haven't thought about that in a long time, but it just kind of popped in my head. And I that was really a formative experience for me. And I would love to have those things again.
Is there any Georgia food that you just got to have in there?
I mean, this sounds like cliche, but like a really good Georgia peach, like good peaches are hard to find. Like even in Georgia, like finding that peach that's perfectly ripe, that doesn't have any bruises or blemishes, and that just like you bite into, maybe it's been chilled for a little bit and it's a hot day, and then the juices run down your face, and you don't care. It's just so good. You're just sort of like, maybe it's probably best to eat it over a sink.
Right.
I don't know. It's hard to beat that.
That sounds really great. And like a pretty decent picnic.
Actually, it's not too bad.
It worked out really well for you.
Not too bad.
So if people want to learn more about Condor Chocolates and Peter Dale, you know where to go. Go to thesouthernfork.com. There will be links there, so you can click on the links to find out a little bit more about the company and all the different flavors you're going to want to go through. There's just so many delicious things to think about when you think about chocolate in Athens, Georgia. And you can also see images of the face behind the voice. As I always say, if you like what you hear, this time there are more than 320 episodes in the archives. So dive in there and get hungry. Listen to some of them. Most of these interviews, all of these interviews are under 45 minutes. I want you to be able to have a snack, not a 5-course tasting meal when it comes to my podcast, and dream of chocolate when you're done. So thank you so much for taking the time, walking me through the factory, letting me look at chocolate and just over and over take pictures of it. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, come back anytime.
Hello and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. Now, I know a lot of you out there, when you hear the words Athens, Georgia, you think of the Georgia Bulldogs. And depending on what sports teams you love and what colleges you support, you might not know much about Athens beyond their sport. But one of the things that I loved about the town of Athens is that it is a vibrant artistic community. And of course, those of you that are familiar know that major bands have come out of the city, including REM and the B-52s. It has a wonderful visual arts community. There is obviously amazing restaurants, which is why I went and visited. And I think that Peter and Nick's chocolate just fits in with all of that. It is a beautiful, creative, artistic expression. Chocolate at some point becomes almost a work of art, and not almost, it does become a work of art because, like Peter and I were chatting, it is so fussy. It is such a beautiful gift, and it's just meant to be special. And so what is so wonderful about Condor is not only is it absolutely delicious and the flavor combinations are so on point and unique and of that combination of Ecuador and Georgia, but that it's made in a beautiful location. It's beautifully wrapped. It's designed well. Every little detail is taken care of, and it feels, my box of truffles feels like a jewel box, and that to me is a win, not just the flavor. So I hope you'll take a chance and take a road trip through Athens soon. And also stay tuned for more Athens content coming soon. In the meantime, I think it's time for a chocolate break in my world. So thanks a lot for listening, and I'll be right here next week.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you gonna eat all that?